Let's talk some NFL football, folks. Back at it with the Two Deep NFL podcast, proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Huge road win for the Dallas Cowboys. Does this put them back into the conversation for the NFC's best team? Jets beat the Eagles. Are they headed back to the playoffs finally? Robert Saleh said the Jets embarrassed the quarterbacks they've played. That's an interesting angle on it. How much do the Eagles miss their coordinators from last year? The Niners lose more than a game in Cleveland as numerous stars go down against the Browns. So the Browns, the playoff team, is Detroit. Are the Lions? Is the roar restored? Are they officially the NFC's best team? Is Tyreek Hill headed for a 2,000-yard season? The Chargers paid their quarterback, so why are they still 2-3? What are we looking for in Week 7? We're gonna try to get it all right now on the Two Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Two Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Two Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Two Deep is proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Two Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And welcome and thanks for joining us. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be a part of the conversation in the stream live, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. We stream on all of them. You can be a part of it. 9 p.m. Central Time on Tuesdays. General rule of thumb when you can be a part of the broadcast, and a lot of folks already lining up with their comments. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network. I'm Soren Petro with you. Thanks for joining us here on a Tuesday night as we broadcast live. Let's get started with that Monday night game, Jeff. Big win for the Cowboys. Does this get them back to where you think they are either currently or could be one of the top teams, if not the top team in the NFC?
Well, it was an important win for them, as their quarterback said, but I'm not buying in just yet. I was on that train 2 weeks in and thought this team was going to be 15-2 and roll into a championship, and then they hit a lot of clunkers in there. And I worry about the offense. You know, I think watching that game on Monday night, you saw some of the ideas Mike McCarthy had about managing a game. You know, you worry about Dak Prescott. The red zone is still a mysterious, Bermuda Triangle area for this team. And the defense isn't the same. They got the big interception by Stephon Gilmore, but, losing Trayvon Diggs, they've gone from being the best pass defense to being one of the worst in the leagues. And that's a hard thing to remedy, even with Micah Parsons playing like a defensive player of the year candidate. I think that they're going to be up and down. Probably they'll be a playoff team, but a team that can win a championship, I wouldn't buy in right now to that.
Where do you sit? Are you bullish on the Cowboys, or do you see this more as a Charger ineptness, Eric?
I said this on the Best Chiefs podcast, Red, Gold, and Bold. Like, my opinion on McCarthy has gone down this year a little bit for sure. Be that as it may, he's still like a top half of the league coach, and like they have talent, right? Gilmore had the interception last night. Parsons had the sack beforehand. Like this is a team that is like legitimately, talented, and more so than most of the teams in the NFL. Dak Prescott has those games. Like there was that tweet that came out the other day that was reminding everybody about the color rush game where the Bills wore red and the Jets wore green, and it was the sort of like colorblind game. And like Dak Prescott sees the game that way like 5 times a year, where like he just can't and the Cowboys tried. They wear white every game to try to not confuse him. But like he just has games where he throws the ball to the other team. And it's infuriating because I think Dak is still like top 1 or 2 quarterbacks in the conference. And that defense, talent-wise is there. So I think that they'll be there at the end. Philadelphia has the hardest schedule in the NFL moving forward in that division. So, it's there for the Cowboys. So I do think that they'll figure it out. It's going to be frustrating at times though, and it especially was the other day.
Yeah. Look, I give them credit. Good football teams find a way to win close games. They found a way to win it. The Chargers couldn't. Dak Prescott didn't throw a pick at the end of the game. Justin Herbert did. And I think all those things have to be respected. But, and I do find it amazing that the national narrative, Jeff, you being a national guy, from this game was to knock the Cowboys. They won, and it's how conservative the offense is, and Dak can't do this or that. Like, why is Justin Herbert going scot-free for his performance in this game? For not getting – when does wins and losses get draped around the neck of Justin Herbert?
Well, look, that last interception was the only interception he had was the last one, and he was under tremendous pressure. He had to throw the football. It was throw the football or take the loss. And so it wasn't like he sat back there and threw the ball to the wrong guy like Neil O'Donnell to Larry Brown in the Super Bowl 20 years ago. But I hear what you're saying. The Cowboys are always going to drive more conversation. They're always going to be the bigger story. I think a lot of people look at the Chargers and understand they're not going to beat the Chiefs in the AFC West, so they're always going to be a second-tier story. And really, you watch that game, it might as well have been played in Dallas because it felt like all the fans were cheering for the Cowboys anyway. So you're talking about a team that doesn't have a huge fan base to really get excited for and follow this team. So, but I hear what you're saying. I just feel as if the Dallas Cowboys, aside from what I just said, are in an NFC, in a conference where there's really only 4 teams worth talking about on a weekly basis. It's them, it's the Eagles, it's the Niners, and it's the Lions right now. Maybe the Seahawks get in there or the Rams, but those are the teams that you're going to really discuss. Where in the AFC, there's just so many teams to pick from that the Chargers are always going to be on a lower level when it comes to that kind of national conversation.
How about this? Herbert equals Jay Cutler.
He's not Jay
Herbert
Cutler.
doesn't throw that many interceptions, like generally though, right?
Yeah.
Like Herbert, and I've said it before. Like I was, bearish on them last year, and I think Herbert gets way too much. Like everybody's wrong about Herbert. All the people that love him are wrong. All the people who think he sucks are wrong. But like
he's played well.
What's that?
He's played well this year.
For the most part. I mean, yesterday he did suck, and it was.
Yeah.
But he does avoid sacks. I mean, he does a lot of the things that great quarterbacks do. It's just that there's always something missing. I think he checks the ball down too quickly. I think he doesn't. Maybe that's where the interceptions crop up at the end of the games, because like in the first 3 quarters of the game, he doesn't put the ball in harm's way, and I think it's a detriment to his team. Frankly, I think he's more talented than checking the ball down all the time. It's a really weird situation there.
Yeah, no, it is. And he's got a new offensive coordinator that was supposed to solve it all. And it's not all getting solved. And even though the Cowboys were being bombed for their performance in last night's game, the thing that I think is interesting, and I heard it by all the talking heads, I know you get on me when I talk about ESPN. I need to watch more NFL Network, Jeff. Sure, NFL Network's on the whole show.
More HGTV or whatever that is.
Yeah.
More Lifetime.
First 6 games last year, with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. They had 9 touchdowns. First 6 games this year. 2 conservative Mike McCarthy, they have 11. First 6 games last year.
Now, is that all offensive or is that defensive in there? They've had some pick sixes.
Well, okay. I don't know. It doesn't specify in here as to which one. I'm just going off the graphic they had up there. Points per drive. This would be all offensive. I think it is just offensive numbers. 1.6 points per drive last year under Kellen Moore, 2.0 points per drive this year under Mike McCarthy. Last year, 32% on third down. This year, 48%. Are they better or not on offense?
The Cowboys?
Yeah.
Well, I think the first 2 games of the season, they were getting a lot of short fields. Defense was setting them up. I don't trust that offense to carry this team right now. I think they're serviceable. I think that they're solid. I think Dak is a good quarterback, but I agree with Eric in that there's a weird mix here, and I feel like Mike McCarthy is running an offense that is right out of 2009, as opposed to one that is really taking advantage. The thing about Kellen Moore that I liked, and you see that in the Chargers offense, he's showing up, is the willingness to use all different aspects of it and the creativity. Like I think they're doing a lot of things that are very old school in Dallas right now. They still have value. I mean, the Titans have been old school forever, and that worked for a long time with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill. But it just feels as if that defense is what drives them. If that defense isn't showing up, they got problems.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Jets beating the Eagles. Jeff, you were very bullish on the New York Jets. Not very bullish, but you thought even when
I defended them.
Yeah. You defended them. Yeah, I don't want to overstate what you said, but I'm actually backing. I'm giving you credit because you I think stuck with them more so than certainly I did. I'll tell you that. I thought they were dead squirrel on the side of the road is what I thought they were. And you said you thought if they could get some level play out of the quarterback, that they could hang around and maybe get into the playoffs. That looks very much the case after the win against the Eagles.
Yeah. And I see people up here talking about Robert Saleh as a clown. Like, Robert Saleh is legitimately a coach of the year candidate because of what this team has done. Like, in the last 6 games or whatever, since Aaron Rodgers went down 4 plays into the season, he's kept this team afloat, kept the quarterback's confidence going.
Because that's what the best coaches in football do. They keep the team afloat. They don't win championships. They keep teams afloat.
Well, they handle adversity. That's not, again, I'm not sitting here saying he's Vince Lombardi, but that team could have craters.
Are you predicting he'll win it because that's how you predict voters to go? I agree if you are. Or are you saying you would give him your vote? You think he deserves it?
I give him my vote. I say he'd be in my top 3. Mike McDaniel, him, and Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's probably going to win it, just the way things are going right now. But Robert Saleh deserves some love for this. I mean, this team, you just said it. Most people bury this team after week 1. Even after they beat the Bills, it was like, yeah, they got that break, but they're going to get ran.
But isn't that the flaw with the award? You bury the team, and and I'm wrong. Because I'm wrong about the Jets, I'm not giving him my award for Coach of the Year because he's still a 500 coach 3 years into his tenure with the New York Jets. Like, that's not Coach of the Year. That's the guy who exceeded my expectations the most. Doesn't make him the best coaching job this year.
So they've gotten here without him coaching? Is that what you're saying? Without him doing a good job coaching?
All the way here to 500?
Yeah, they could be 0-5 right, 0-6 right now.
How many years before you expect that guy to win?
What do you mean? Like,
it's his 3rd year.
They brought in a Hall of Fame quarterback who is literally standing on the sidelines.
And they drafted the other guy with the 2nd pick of the draft.
And he's playing halfway decent.
Develop players.
And he's playing halfway decent.
Zach, I love you to death, and I do agree that Robert Saleh is doing a better job than expected. Zach Wilson's not playing well.
He's playing decent. Yeah, he's not playing at Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes level, but he's not awful.
He's not playing at Sam Howell levels even.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's that? What level is Sam Howell?
Well, but this is where I get worried.
The worst quarterback in the history of football 5 weeks ago.
So like Brian,
now he's like 999.
Yeah.
But my issue is like Brian Dable won Coach of the Year last year because he took a team that had a Vegas win total of 7 to the playoffs, and they beat a bad Vikings team in the playoffs. And now the guy can't coach his way out of a freaking paper bag. And he's dragging.
He would kill for Zach Wilson right now. He would kill to have Zach Wilson running his offense right now.
But he's undressing Tyrod Taylor for being competitive against the Bills because he's too stupid to tell the guy not to check into a run play. And now, like, to me, this is where the Coach of the Year thing is like a broken award because it always goes to the guy, like, other than the Harbaugh in 2019, it always goes to the guy that has a dog crap quarterback like Baker Mayfield and is able to get him to the playoffs and be plucky and it's never indicative of
and
the guy
injuries,
actually doing a good job.
And injuries in the schedule usually smile on them. The Giants last year with Brian Daboll, they back-ass
the Jets getting the bad Broncos, and the Jets getting the bad Broncos, and a bad the Eagles playing.
They beat the Eagles, who won the NFC last year. They almost beat the Chiefs, who won the Super Bowl, and they beat the Bills.
They did not.
Won the championship.
They did not almost beat the Chiefs.
It was a 3-point game. It was 20-20 in the fourth quarter.
A yard away from being 10.
With a quarterback who did nothing.
The quarterback took a slide. So if you're going to quote the 3 points, you have to put the whole 3 points in the
But I agree with you that defense is the truth. And because it is Saleh's calling card, I will give you some credit. I will understand that. Like, I do think Saleh gets a lot of credit for that defense. It is the truth. They down the Eagles without their 2 starting corners on Sunday. All of that stuff is right. The fact, though, that they went into this thing with Zach Wilson as their backup plan, that is your fault too. Like that is part of the problem.
Let me ask you this: we're all historians here. What happened to the Indianapolis Colts when Peyton Manning suffered a neck injury in his last season?
Caldwell lost his job.
They went right into the tank,
but
it all blew up.
But Jeff, the last time your Lions were a contender before now was when Jim Caldwell took that team to the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, and Jim Caldwell got fired because he was not able to resurrect. Like, it's all noise, right? Like, Jim Caldwell was the guy that, like, he was the head that got chopped off because of the Peyton Manning year. Like, some of this stuff is just not, like, it's not predictive of being a good coach.
So you think he's not doing a good coaching job? You're both saying he's not doing a good coaching job.
I'm just saying.
No, I'm saying he's not the coach of the year.
Okay, is he in the top 3?
No.
He's not in the top 3. Who are the top 3 coaches? Who are the top 3 coaching jobs of the year right now?
Dan in no particular order. McDaniel, Campbell, Shanahan.
Say Campbell's name one more time, Petro, just for me.
Shanahan's sitting on a truck of a team.
It's the guys that are 5-1. It's not some ass 500 team. It never will be. You will never hear it come from me. And it drives people crazy. I get the Big 12 Coach of the Year vote. I give it to Bill Self. Oh, he's got so much talent. Yes, the talent he recruited, which is part of coaching. And these guys are paid to win games. They're paid to win games. Not come out and put forth a good effort and not exceed the expectations of some media fat asses. They're paid to win games. What do you think? Where does Andy Reid rank amongst the best coaches in the NFL?
Right now?
Yes.
He's probably top 3.
But he's
NFL history or NFL right now?
But he never does the best job.
Because he's got the best quarterback. Who he didn't pick.
Then why didn't he win it every year when he had a pedestrian quarterback and he went to the playoffs every year with Philadelphia?
Well, I can't remember every situation that was going on then, but who was winning the award back then. But I remember that he had some losses in the NFC Championship game that tainted the way people looked at him.
Yeah, but is Saleh doing a good job? I think he's doing a good job. Is he doing like award-winning job? No. They got absolute.
I'm saying, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, who was top 5 coaching jobs? I'll widen it out there.
No.
Who was doing a better coaching job?
I will tell you again. Mike McDaniel, Andy Reid,
Ron Rivera's got one.
Okay, we're not even talking about really coaching. We're talking about who's got the most talent.
No,
it's not coaching.
No, but part of the job of coaching is putting together a winning team.
We have an entire chat every freaking Tuesday talking about how dog shit the wide receivers are for the Chiefs, and we want to ding Andy Reid because he's got talent. What are we doing here?
Like, how many of those teams are playing with backup quarterbacks? Only one. Robert Saleh.
The number 2 overall pick in the draft. Like, I don't understand why the fact that guy has been a crippling disaster is somehow not at all on Robert Saleh's hands.
He didn't pick him.
He was part of the conversation.
He didn't pick him. He was given him.
Oh, my God.
They picked him.
Yeah, Joe Douglas picked him.
He picked him.
He
He
may have
was
said,
in,
"Okay, I like this guy." He's not telling Joe, "I want that guy, Joe Douglas." Joe
he
Douglas
was in the
picked him.
room.
Coach of the year is Dan Campbell. The coach of the year last year was Dan Campbell. The coach of the year in 2021 was Dan Campbell. And Dan Campbell.
And why was he the coach of the
for
year?
3 straight
Why was he
years.
the coach of the year in those years?
No.
I mean, took a team from 1-6 to 9-8 last year with Jared Goff at court. Like,
Enough about we agree to disagree on Robert Saleh and where he belongs, but it's making a statement in post game that they haven't beaten all the quarterbacks, but they've embarrassed all of them.
Yeah, he's done a pretty good job against most of them.
Listen, the top 3 finishers for the MVP last year, in order: Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen, had threw 3 touchdowns and turned the ball over 9 times against them.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of that on Josh Allen's, 4 of them, 4 of the 9 on Josh Allen. So I understand where he's coming from on that front, but you don't say that. Would you hear Andy Reid say that? Would you hear Bill Belichick say that? Would you hear Kyle Shanahan say that? That's why you know he's not the coach of the year, and that's why you know that record ain't going to be any better than about 8-9.
I think he's talking to his team, and I think he knows. I think what he's saying is a lot of people back 5 weeks ago were saying we were done. And I think his quote was, "People are writing our obituaries."
And to quote Eric Eager, he's putting a fake trophy up. He's putting the 3-3 trophy up on the mantle. Look at what we've done, guys. We embarrassed quarterbacks. I mean, we didn't beat them all, but like, we're here to embarrass people, not win games. And we've done what we set out to accomplish. We embarrassed a couple quarterbacks, if you can call what they've done embarrass them. And we're at 500.
He embarrassed them.
Let me polish this trophy here.
I think he's saying we're
set
here.
it up on the mantle, and that's why they will suck. That's why he will be fired.
I think he's saying we're here. People were burying us. They were writing obituaries. We are here.
Well, and I don't think anybody cares until they take the field against him. And so what do you think he will be? At the Giants, they should be 4-3, right? No way he loses to the Giants, right?
They'll beat the Giants.
What are the odds, Eric? I'll bet they're shockingly low.
And so I guess it's not a home or road game. So I think the Jets should be -4 to the Giants, depending upon who is that this week?
Yes.
Well, let me look at the odds.
Or do they have a bye? It's their next game. I didn't look at the date.
A lot of teams have buys this week.
October 29th. They're on a bye.
Yeah. So I mean, like, look, the Giants they play this week against Washington. They're 2-point road dogs to Sam Howell. Look at life over here for the Giants. So I would say off a bye, they're probably -4.5.
Okay. The Giants are a hot bucket of ass. And they are going to get, I'll bet you 3.5 points in that game.
You're picking the Giants to win that game?
I'm telling you, the odds makers, like, if they're that bad and Saleh is that good, this should be Jets -10.5.
I don't worry about that stuff. I think it's if they go out and win the game. What were they against the Eagles? I guarantee it was like probably a 10-point spread.
Yeah,
they were only 6.5-point home dogs in that game.
I love how when certain teams win, well, it didn't matter. When other teams win, it's the defining moment of who they are.
Well, I mean, I get what you were saying because the expectations were low. It was like a wake, at Meadowlands that night, and they still overcame. Like, look, there are some. Saleh has done some good things. That defense has been amazing. Last year, they were really good without forcing turnovers. Now they're forcing turnovers, winning against the Eagles for the first time in franchise history without your 2 starting corners. There's some good stuff there. No, don't get me wrong. I think that there have been better coaching jobs in the NFL, like Dan Campbell. Yeah, for the last 3 years.
And that's fine. I'm not saying that like he's the definitive coaching job of the year. I'm saying that I'm not looking around the league and saying all this great coaching going on. I think there's a lot of teams that are going up and down each week, and
I will agree. They're not a laughing stock anymore. You're right. I just don't think. I think giving him talking about him being the coach of the year at 3-3 is insanity as far as I'm concerned. And by the way, he is the only coach to lose to the Patriots this year, and Mac Jones, a team that is getting there just drummed by everybody. He lost to Mac Jones and the Patriots. And then came back and beat that's what I'm saying. Like, they got through that. Yeah, well, I mean, but we can't hold some teams down for losing games and then celebrate the loss because he came back from it later. I don't think that's fair. He's all of it. He's everything. Listen, we'll get to the Eagles next here in a second, but he reeled back on those comments today. That was emotional. Yeah, that's the point. Good coaches don't say stupid things. They don't come out of, they don't have to. When was the last time Bill Belichick or Andy Reid came out the next day and went, no, I probably shouldn't have said that? And when was the
because
last
they're sitting there with their starting Hall of Fame quarterback saying, I don't have to say that.
I didn't realize
Like,
fans the script to Andy Reid.
I guarantee you, Robert Saleh wouldn't be saying, hey, Aaron Rodgers, another lap. Go 4 more. He'd be sitting back and saying,
where do we sit? Where do we sit on the Eagles now? They're missing their coordinators. They've been kind of living dangerously, and now they finally lost Jeff. Now, a good loss in your mind with the Coach of the Year Jets getting it done, but they take on their first loss. What do we take away from the Eagles?
I think they're just going through a transition. I think it's clear. I mean, I like Brian Johnson as an offensive coordinator. I think he's got a chance to be a head coach in this league, but Shane Steichen was there and was a big part of Jalen Hurts' success. Their offensive line is banged up now. Lane Johnson went down. That's a big factor. And their secondary has had some issues. They miss C.J. Gardner-Johnson being there. They lost Devontae Maddox earlier this year. They've got a couple other guys got banged up this past week. They were struggling in the back end of their defense. And you saw it against the Rams. They really didn't give – Zach Wilson didn't play great, but they didn't really give him a ton of problems. They got a lot of young players playing. Eagles will be fine. I'm not worried about the Eagles. I think it wasn't a great start to Jalen Hurts' post-MVP runner-up season. He's turning the ball over more, but he's also trying to make more plays and not running as much. So that's going to affect their offense.
Jalen Hurts did not throw more interceptions this year than he threw all of last year, Eric. Coordinator issue, or just defenses prepping him better?
Good question. I think he just looks slower this year processing the game. It's weird. Like, he also looks slower running, like when he takes it to the outside. Banged up at the end of the year last year. Obviously had a great game against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I just think like the league is catching up to him a little bit, and you're seeing frustration on AJ Brown's part at times. It's interesting. I think that, look, I just don't know if he was all that great to begin with, and he was surrounded by a lot of great talent last year, Shane Steichen as well, and I just think the league's kind of catching up to him, like literally in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think that's part of Brian Johnson. I thought would be rocketing to a head coaching job after this year as the offensive coordinator. And everybody speaks very highly of him, but he bears some of the weight of what's, and not as efficient offensively, and the quarterback not playing as well, even though he's given much of the credit for how Jalen Hurts was playing last year when he was the quarterback coach. So it's not like he's a new guy, came from nowhere. He's been around the program.
They're not running him as much. That's a big part of the conversation. He's not the weapon he was running the football. And it's because I'm assuming they don't want him getting hurt.
Not with that money, yeah. Not with the money they've got tied into him. They are asking him to play differently. If you are looking for the best when it comes to your parking lot issues, why risk liability and accidents in your lot? Get your parking lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot cuts down on accidents, keeps your parking lot safer, keeps you focused on what matters, the business at hand. You can find Gann Asphalt and Concrete right now online at gannasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Let's turn our attention to the 49ers losing in Cleveland. And I think we talked about this last week. I can't remember if we said it here on Too Deep or if it was just on my radio show, but Niners are great. They look fantastic. They were everybody's number one team. Seems like as soon as you become that, you immediately lose. We've watched it starting back in week 3 with the Cowboys to the Dolphins to the Bills, and now to the 49ers they lose. And they lose players. Like you can get excited about the Niners. And maybe they're going to lose them now and get them all back at the end. But every year, Trent Williams is hurt. He got hurt in this game. Deebo Samuel's not playing in games. He got hurt in this game. Finished the game in a hoodie. Christian McCaffrey got hurt. Like, is this a roster of fragile players, Eric? Is that what we're dealing with here? And that at some point, maybe while they're great when they're healthy, they just aren't healthy enough.
Yeah, it sounds like they dodged a decent amount of bullets there, although I'm skeptical that McCaffrey will be back this week, for example. It's not fragile players. It's like a fragile roster makeup. When you can boast and pump your chest over the fact that you don't depend so heavily on your quarterback, that means you depend heavily on tight end, like left tackle, do everything everywhere all at once, wide receiver, running back, and like any of those break, and now all of a sudden the guy that matters the most, which is the quarterback, starts playing poorly. Now, the other part is, and no one handicapped this. I actually liked Cleveland last week, and against the spread for one, and even like them, like if they would have had Watson for sure at the +3 price before we knew that he was out. Like Cleveland's defense is real. Like we're talking about the Jets. Cleveland's defense is twice as good as the Jets defense, and probably twice as good as any other defense in the NFL. When you look at EPA per play, you look at success rate. We're talking about historic values, and they were, they got punched in the mouth, early in the game. Then they had the turnover, and then they gave up a touchdown to Jordan Mason at the end. But like in the middle part of that game, the Niners got they move the ball very rarely. And when you look at like Dalvin Tomlinson, Darius Smith, Myles Garrett, the secondary being all good, I think we're in a league where great defense right now is beating great offense, and that really happened on Sunday.
Yeah.
Plus, weather conditions were not great either. Like all of those things, we wanted the Niners to overcome in one game, and they couldn't because great defense and weather conditions that really stymied them.
And the Niners, the way they play, they're a physical team. The guys we just mentioned, they want to be physical. They want to run the football. They want to beat you up. Deebo Samuel wants to bang. McCaffrey gets a lot of use in a lot of different aspects of their offense. And so you're going to be more vulnerable to injury when you play that way. Like if you watch the Chiefs play, catch the ball, get down, they're not, even talk about short yardage situations. Pacheco is the one guy that really gets in there and bangs away, and that's why he stands out. But their whole team is wired that way. I mean, they catch the ball, they run after the catch guys, Kittle's that way. And so they're more vulnerable to that kind of stuff. But like Eric said, they didn't take major injuries. Guys are going to get banged up at some point over the course of a season. Every team is going to go through it. It's just part of the deal.
Guys get banged up around the quarterback, and the quarterback still has to produce. Did you see enough out of Brock Purdy, Eric, that makes you think he drove them down and gave them a 41-yard field goal? Did you see enough out of Brock Purdy to think that he's a guy that's more than just a product of great talent and play design around him?
No, but we knew this. Like we knew that the Cinderella story was going to come to an end. The question is like, can they rebound off of this? Right? We've seen a number of guys be found out in this way, and they can rebound and become like still equilibrate. Like Brock Purdy was first in the NFL in expected points added per dropback. And, for some players like Patrick Mahomes, that truly is a quarterback stat. And for some other offenses, it's an offense stat. And I think we all knew in our heart of hearts that that's an offensive stat for the Niners. It's just now the question is going to be, okay, when that offense isn't quite as rough and tough, then how can you, where's your left hand? I think that they'll be fine offensively, but I think it's going to get into the the Jimmy Garoppolo range where it's like still very effective, still like a top guy when it comes to efficiency, but we're all like none of us have any sort of pretense that this guy's an elite player.
Are you in on Purdy, Jeff?
Yeah, I thought that last drive showed a lot about what he is. And I know you're not when you're having a tough game in that situation and all you are is just a product of your environment, you don't put your team in position to win. you throw some incompletion, maybe you throw a pick, you take a sack. He took them down the field, put them in position for a 41-yard field goal, and the kicker missed it. If Jake Moody makes that field goal, we're not having this conversation right now. Now, I agree. He's not going to be the next Tom Brady, but he's shown me a lot more than what I thought of him last year, which was that he was a guy who was just driving the bus. Like he's got some talent. They use him correctly. And I imagine, depending on who can play this week, he'll play better because when you lose Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel in the middle of a game and Trent Williams is banged up, your offense is going to go to crap anyway.
Are the Browns a playoff team, Jeff?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's If I'm picking right now out of the AFC North, I'm taking the Browns and the Bengals. Those are the two teams I trust the most. I don't trust Baltimore, and I don't trust Pittsburgh. And so you look at the way the league is going right now with the way defense is really carrying the day. When you beat the best team in the league with your backup quarterback playing, you've shown me something. Like they are going to be a tough team to deal with.
Are you buying the Browns as a playoff team, Eric?
Yeah, I think Jim Schwartz is doing a terrific job. I think it's more than just the talent that they have. My biggest concern is I think if they treat Deshaun Watson like they treated Phillip Walker last game and just say, look, man, like keep this thing in the green, like I think that they can win. If they trust Watson to like play up to his contract, you're going to get games like the Pittsburgh game where you're a much better team, but he's out there face masking people and throwing picks and doing dumb stuff and losing you games. Like Deshaun Watson to me is like their worst enemy because I just don't think they can win with him trying to be a hero all the time. If they stick, and again, this is me talking this way, if they stick to the defense and like conservative play calling, like I think that they will. And to Jeff's point, the Ravens got to stop messing around every single game. Like we got to stop getting to the third quarter and it's 10-3 and I'm texting my boss and being like, the Ravens F around and lose this game 5 times a year like they did against the Steelers. So I agree. I think the Steelers, you can't trust them. They're not any good. I don't care what their record is. And the Ravens goof off too much. The Bengals aren't good either. That game was gifted to the Bengals by Geno Smith. So I do think Cleveland comes out of this division, at least with a playoff spot, possibly with the title.
We didn't really have the Ravens on the list, but you know, how many quarterbacks do you have to give a guy? How many left tackles do you have to sign to big contracts before somebody says, maybe it's the quarterback?
You talking about Lamar?
Yes.
You mean receivers? How many receivers you have to give him?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What did I say?
How many quarterbacks?
Oh, I'm sorry. How many receivers?
Yeah.
They've now given a lot of wide receivers and tight ends and you know, and it's like, oh, okay. It's always we got to get more around him. We got to get more around him. Okay, well, we'll see. Let's see. The Detroit Lions, officially the NFL's best team, Jeff.
The NFL's best?
NFC's, they've got their time for the best record in the NFL.
I'm not going to go that far, but they're a top 5 team. And you know, I know, I think somebody made a comment either on our last podcast or this one talking about that the Chiefs were one Kadarius Toney catch away from winning that game. I give the Lions are a good team. However you want to look at how they got to where they are, you look at the way they play, very physical, very well coached. Jared Goff, I saw a stat that said over the last 17 games, he's got 29 touchdown passes and 4 picks. And so he's playing like an MVP. I mean, he's legitimately in that conversation now. And so I give Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, the general manager, a ton of credit for how they built this team because I don't know if they foresaw the league becoming this, but the way the league is right now is scoring down and defense being up, like the way they're positioned, they can be they can be a championship team with what they have because they're built for this kind of NFL.
Are the Lions the NFC's best, the NFL's best, Eric?
They were my pick to make the Super Bowl in the preseason. The Bills and Detroit. I think Jeff brings up a good point. Like Brad Holmes, you know, stuck with the plan. I mean, this is also, guys, Jamison Williams hasn't produced much, right? Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell, their 2 first-round picks this year, haven't produced much. And yet you think about they just continue to build offensive line, defensive line with Aiden Hutchinson. You know, they got depth in the secondary. Now, their schedule doesn't – they haven't beaten a lot of great teams other than Kansas City, but the convincing manner with which they're beating teams is the signal to me. Somebody asked if the roar is being restored. The roar was restored last year when they went on the run from 1-6 to 9-8 and knocked the Packers out of the playoffs in Week 18. And this is just them like taking that confidence and boosting it. Now, if Gibbs and Jamison Williams can come in and bring that spark, like one of their weaknesses is like lack of depth at the skill position players. Like they'll have that. and the path there. Look, the rest of their division, Chicago stinks, Minnesota stinks, Green Bay stinks. Like their path to the 1 seed is actually fairly straightforward.
Yeah, and it's rare to see a team that's really physical be really creative on offense. Like it's a really, you're either one or the other. Like it's very hard to merge that. So to be able to pull that off, that's what makes them scary, is that they can play a lot of different styles and win that way.
Jeff, you were the one. No, Eric, you said you have no confidence in the Ravens. Who said they had no confidence in the Ravens? Jeff?
I said I don't believe in the Ravens.
Do you believe?
I think Eric said it too.
Because I think the Ravens are a good team, but I just
okay. That's all. Because my point is more about the Lions. The reason I ask it is because the Ravens are 3-point favorites against the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I make the game 1.
Yeah,
That's
in Baltimore, right?
Yes,
it's in Baltimore. I make the game about 1.5. I make the Ravens about the same power rating as the Lions, but that's just because they play in a better conference, and like that's just how it works. But I would, if I were betting that game, I'd take the Lions +3 for a pretty big amount.
All right, let's move along to one Tyreek Hill, 841 receiving yards in 6 games. Jeff, is this the NFL's first 2,000-yard receiver?
Yes, unless he pulls a hamstring or does something crazy.
And he walked up the field twice in the last game.
Yeah, cramping up. But look, we knew he was special when he was here. We knew it was a big loss when he left, and we see what he means to Tagovailoa's development. I mean, every week I'm astounded that teams still single cover him, that he's running, across the field on sail routes and, deep overs and doing all this stuff that they've got a great scheme in Miami, but he makes it go. And he just brings so much energy to the offense. He's a Hall of Fame receiver, and he's showing it once again. I think he's going to blow right past 2,000 yards.
Eric?
Yeah, I think that's fairly plain. I mean, Tua's health matters a lot. This week against the Eagles, that's something that, I'll be monitoring, obviously, how good that Eagles defensive front does against, Dolphins offensive line that doesn't have all their guys all the time. But yeah, I mean, if Tua stays healthy, Tyreek Hill is going to blow past 2,000 yards, as Jeff said. I mean, and Waddle being there is obviously great, but like even more than last year, they're going to Hill predominantly. Like it's actually insane how much they've consolidated the targets towards him.
Yeah, it's almost like they're going for a record or something. Right? Or the flip side is he's just that good you can't cover him.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 5 yards per route run. That's insane. Like Julio in 2016, Kyle Shanahan, Thomas Dimitroff Falcons was 3, and that's like the best we've seen. And so Hill's insane. Like this is absurd stuff that we're watching.
All right. I think it's absurd. I want to touch on the Chargers because they are 2-3 again. Is this Brandon Staley's fault? Is Brandon Staley, the main reason why the Chargers don't win, Jeff?
Well, it's going to get hung around his neck. I mean, and that's because he's there. He was brought in to do what has happened in Cleveland, what has happened in Baltimore, Mike McDonald coming over there. He was brought in to help a defense get better, and the defense hasn't gotten better. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I feel like every year I look at their stats at this time of year, they're like 20th in points allowed and 25th in yards allowed, and they don't have great pressure rates. They don't have a ton of turnover. It's just mind-boggling because Eric was in our last podcast talking about all the money that has been invested in the Chiefs defense over the past couple of years. And the Chargers have invested just as much, if not more, in their defense. And certainly J.C. Jackson is probably the face of it, and that you spent $80 million on a guy who's now back in New England a year later. But I don't understand how Brandon Staley can't get more out of a defense that is loaded with talent. And so, yeah, I think that if he can't get this team into the playoffs, then he's going to be done.
Is it possible that Khalil Mack and Bosa and Derwin James are just overrated, Eric, and that's the problem with this team?
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody else's fault with Brandon Staley.
No, I'm just asking. Brandon Staley's going to get fired, and I'm the record guy. So no, it's his fault. You can't be this many years into it with a quarterback that good and it not be on your ass. And you got to go out and get a new offensive coordinator. You have to get it right. I'm on Staley.
But my issue is like, how systemic is it? Like, are we talking about Telesco?
Well, that's because
he's part of the problem.
There's an interesting comment here. Nick said, still amazes me that Sean Payton didn't wait to take over the Chargers job, right? And it's first of all, if they wanted Sean Payton, he'd be there.
But they had the money. It's a money thing.
Well,
Mike Sanders had the money.
Mike Sanders says it's also a control thing, that the Chargers, the Spanos family, does not want a strong, dominant personality at the top of their team. And so that would seem to be that maybe there is something that's more wrong than Staley.
They went through this with A.J. Smith and Marty Schottenheimer back in the day, and they want no parts of that again. I totally can see that theory. It was a mess, and they had a super talented team then and couldn't win.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it makes Anthony Lynn look better every single day. Like there are parts of these things that, I think Staley deserves a decent amount of flack. I think that when you watch that team play, he's very good at some in-game decision making. Like not the fourth down stuff you can, but like in terms of timeouts and all that stuff, very good. But they do things that are characteristic of a poorly coached team. They jump off sides. They get called for a legal man downfield. Like all the silly stuff they get called for all the time. So, I mean, are their players overrated? Maybe. And I do think like Khalil Mack, they do like go after names. It's kind of Washington, the old R words like, Bruce Smith and Deion Sanders and, Jeremiah Trotter, oh my, and all that stuff. I do think that there's vibes with that. But the coach deserves some flack there.
Yeah, but you know what though? Here, I'll push back on that and say this: that there's talent there, and if you're the Spanos family, the first thing you say to Brandon Staley when you hire him, what's your plan for our quarterback? How are you going to get him to be the best he can be? And if the answer is Joe Lombardi, then we're having a problem right off. Maybe you're not the right guy for the job, because it shouldn't have been, hey, come in here, make the defense better, and the quarterback will just somehow morph into a superstar. And that part is on Brandon Staley. That part is on the organization, because you don't take a guy at that level and say, all right, well, let's see how it works out. Like the Bengals, they had Zach Taylor. They brought in Sean McVay to fix Jared Goff. When Carson Wentz was playing well for the Eagles, they went and got Doug Peterson. You go get somebody to make your young quarterback a success.
We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, with free consultations, no commissions. Every project coming with a written warranty. They are your solution for your parking lot problems. Been solving them in Kansas City since 1994. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Let's start with Week 7. What are we looking for in Week 7? Eric, you want first crack at this?
Yeah, I do want to see how San Francisco rebounds. I do want to see how many players they bring to Minnesota in a game where this is the Vikings are 7-point road dogs with Kirk Cousins home dogs. With Kirk Cousins as quarterback, the Vikings have never been more than 3.5-point underdogs at home, and have never been more than 7.5-point underdogs ever. This is uncharted water for Minnesota. There have been some grumblings about, the regime and whether or not they're getting along. Like, I'm looking forward to that game, because that's a must-win game kind of, I think, for both teams, right? If the Niners lose, you're going to start to ask questions. And if the Vikings lose, now you're talking about selling Danielle Hunter. You're talking about selling, possibly Kirk Cousins. So that one's one that I'm very intrigued by.
Jeff?
I want to see the Dolphins and the Eagles, how that game plays out, because the Eagles are in a pretty precarious place right now. They got some tough games coming up, and the secondary is banged up, and you don't want to have a banged up secondary going against that passing offense. And so for me, this game could be a blowout. And if it's a blowout, I think it could be pretty scary sign about what Philadelphia is dealing with moving forward.
Blowout for the Dolphins.
For the Dolphins, yeah.
Eagles 2-point favorites in the game. Does that surprise you? I know you don't get into the betting, but does that surprise you?
That surprises me, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Listen, there are a couple of them that I love. I love the Falcons and Bucks. Is this going to be a pillow fight in the NFC South? It's just an absolute hot mess.
It's
Or
unwatchable division, by the way, right?
a what?
Unwatchable division. Like every NFC South game seems to be. I can't turn it on.
Both South divisions, really. I mean, the Jags are kind of asserting themselves now, but yeah, like they're like that little patty cake fest that may go on there. I think could be just intriguing. I kind of think Todd Bowles will bounce back and the Bucks will handle business. Falcons look like they have real issues after starting 2-0. They're 1-3 in their last 4. But how can you not be drawn to Bill Belichick's last stand against the Buffalo Bills? 1-5 against a Buffalo Bills team that's fired up and
that is
looking for a pound of flesh.
That is going to be a murder on Sunday. I look. My one of my good friends was text me on Saturday and I go, who should I bet this week? I go, New England +3. New England gets the ball back down 2. And he's like, oh, thanks for that pick. I'm like, no. Wait till this season. And then, of course, Mac Jones takes the safety. They lose by 4. And I'll say this, and I know like Thomas was, work for him, a lot of respect for him. I do too. He's the best coach of all time, in my opinion. That is a poorly coached team. The New England Patriots have all the marks of a poorly coached team. They jump off sides. They do everything that poorly coached teams do, and we're all afraid to say it because Bill Belichick is the best coach of all time. I know you disagree with me, Petro, and we're not going to get into that, but like he is the best of all time. But right now, that team is poorly coached. I would never, if I was still betting, bet a red cent on that team getting 20 points in this game. That team is not viable anymore.
Is he finally doing what he should have done 3 years ago in tanking?
Yes. That they should have started Jared Stidham during the pandemic year.
Yes.
Bled out.
But is that what he's doing?
You think he's tanking?
Do you think he's tanking?
They're playing like it.
Yeah, they're going to end up with the top 5 pick the way it's going. There's no question about that part of it. I don't think they're tanking. I think if they were well coached, the talent's so bad they wouldn't.
Does he get to see it through though? Because right now they've added. I mean, they spent a bleep ton in free agency in 21. That team went 10-7 and got shown the doors by Buffalo in the playoffs. That's the best it's gotten for him since Brady. I don't know if he gets to see it through. I think Belichick might be coaching Chicago next year.
Oof.
Oh God.
Crap wants to see him get that.
Nick is correct. I have a number of TVs going on NFL Sunday, and my friends will come over, and I usually, we have a red zone. We have the Chiefs game if it's on or whatever. I always have a game I'm like, no, this TV's getting this. Like that game's terrible. I'm like, I know, I love it. We have to have it. I love watching incompetent professional football. It is absolutely
that's the place to go for it. NFC South.
It is an absolute American treasure.
Can we pause the AJ High Noon to talk about? Can we talk about tanking because the donkeys are doing it? The Broncos aren't trying to lose. Like this is the other part that like there's an art to this, and the Broncos know like this isn't.
It's called the
that
Cardinals.
Hail Mary that they completed against the Commanders. They're trying to win. They're just bad. Like that. That's another problem. Is like that. I don't know. Like the team that's trying to lose and the team that's picking first is the Arizona Cardinals. They are the team that I like because they are actually tanking and trying, and they're looking good for 3 quarters a game, and then they play the tank play in the 4th quarter and start and so I that's the one team that is tanking. Everybody else is just incompetent right now.
I love it. I love it. Listen, there's something that just, I don't know, makes me happy to watch bad professional football. All right, that's going to do it. Remember, we're brought to you by our good friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, best around. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, my name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810, WHB in Kansas City, saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Two Deep NFL Podcast.